All right, it's recording.
Great.
Hi, guys.
There we go. I got all the things you posted in the file, Jenna. So where should we go next? This is kind of your vision now, because I did my reporting towards your outline of themes, which
I think it's great. So we all three sort of landed in the same place once we dove into the minutes and the recordings. I was offering to go ahead and I think in my head, and I would love your input, sort of the components now that are missing. I think that we'll sort of put those to package those together, and I'm happy to take a stab at that. But an executive summary piece that really just says, thanks so much for the opportunity. Here is our report. Outside of a standard, 12-month reporting, we've elected for this reason to back it up to last summer, and kind of just give that high-level exec summary sort of opening. My hope was that one of you would feel inspired to start taking a stab at summarizing our look forward that we can take. And I think that's something that is really going to be the heavy weight of the full committee. But in my opinion, a jumping off point for them to start discussion on, rather than trying to brainstorm and wordsmith with 7 people on a Zoom call. If we are able to, if one of you feels so inspired to summarize what we've talked about in recent months and maybe start to put forward some proposal for what the next 12 months might look like for the committee, that would sort of be that bookend piece. And then we can put it all together and then be ready to share it out with the larger committee for their rounds of edits. How does that sound?
it sounds great.
Yes, I'm liking it. I'm wondering, so one thing I'm personally, and my apologies for getting the time from the last meeting too. I felt so bad. I got home and I was like, oh God, I was really glad to get the calendar invite for this one though, so we're good. That being said, one thing I'm personally working on is not overcommitting to things. So what timeline are we working on? Because I'm interested in doing the horizons, next steps, kind of vision for the next 12-month piece, but I just want to make sure I'm not, that I have enough time to actually get it done and do a quality job.
I think we're meeting, if Jessica were here, with in February.
It's until February, right? Okay, that's what I was thinking.
But we wanted to give a preview in January
To the committee. Okay.
to our fellow committee.
Okay.
So that's, in my world, that's a long timeline. I always say
Exactly.
3 to 4 weeks to get it home.
Same. They're like, hey, could you have this website built by next week? Thank you.
But I've got about 12 things on my plate now.
For like today. Yeah.
Funny you say that. I got kidnapped at 10 a.m. and got run up to OSU, and then just got delivered back for this meeting by a bunch of laboratory guys who used to be basketball players.
I feel you on that, Michael. This is my lunch, this little cookie that someone left me for a holiday. But I was thinking, so Brittany, to more specifically answer, I thought maybe if we had a rough draft that could be more of that first read for January. So it doesn't have to be super complete. It doesn't have to be super polished, but really like we kind of did with our review of the minutes. And that would be something I think Jessica sends out, usually our agenda, maybe the Monday before our meeting.
Okay.
So that looks like it would be the 3rd of January, if I'm accurate. Maybe I'd lean into Tiffany. Does that sound right, Tiffany? Poor Tiffany. She's like, I didn't think there was going to be questions.
Sorry, I muted myself and then I started talking and realized I'm muted. Yeah. January 6th is the next SPAC meeting, so the agenda should come out on Monday the 3rd.
Okay. Awesome. So that would be the, okay, awesome.
And that would give us then the committee could scan it, familiarize themselves with it, and we could be prepared to be like, yep, everybody on the committee feels good about this at our February meeting. That sound good?
That sounds good. Yeah, I can definitely peruse. I'll peruse everyone's notes. I think that you're exactly right, Jenna. We all structured them pretty similarly. So I can, and I actually did in my notes, I did like a highlight or like a horizon section that kind of tried to talk about that a little bit or start. I was generating ideas as I was watching stuff. So I tried to take note of that. So yeah, I'll just go through. I'm happy to take on that part. I'll just go through, try to come up with some suggestions. And I like the idea of not making it too guided. So maybe I'll frame it more as almost like discussion questions too. Do you all have any thoughts on that in terms of let's like phrase them more as questions so it generates conversation, but also guides?
For the future?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have several.
Awesome.
You know, I want clarity from the council, and so I'm gonna throw this little grenade, hopefully in a positive way. But one is we need to focus on minority BIPOC representation, and that's got to be a paramount importance to not only the committee but to the city council. And then the second thing I'd like clarity on them from is they need to address whether or not they want an active police commission where cases are reviewed, where feedback is given to the department, which isn't us, or our preview, whether they want that, or what we do is we're sort of a glorified neighborhood watch, and we're just sort of reviewing policies. And I want them to understand that, because we have a lot of people in the community that are sending us stuff who have the perception that we are like in Eugene.
Like an oversight.
We're not a CRB. People think we're a CRB and we're not.
So I want them to address that. Like, we don't want that. And, or, you know, so I can then pass it on. I rotate off in a year. But it's been that tug of war issue, and I think it's one they should. And we've had a pretty robust changeover in council members, and I think they would tackle that. I have had a couple members of my staff who've been on the police commission and the oversight, and it's a tough job.
Well, and I think that that's really the designation. You are spot on. That is what my notes, when I was reviewing my stuff, we asked several times, and I'm not sure we were asking the right question, because we asked for, our charge and those kind of things. And rightfully so, they brought back our bylaws. But I think the question is, where is the council's intention for community oversight?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that it lives with us in our current structure. And
it doesn't live in our current structure.
Right. And so if not, how does council want that structure to fill, either complement? So I'm with you, Michael, my experience comes from Eugene. And so there's the police commission and then the citizen review board, and they're separate but parallel. And in absence of that, I think our community has been confused and frustrated with us, because we're not like, we want to see every detail around individual, IA investigations, things like that. That's not our purview. But there should be a conversation at the council level around whose purview is that. So.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's a little smoke and mirrors. And so I feel a little set up. Because if I see a Springfield Advisory Police Commission, I would assume that too if I were in the public and not. And so I don't know, the city council needs to take some responsibility. I know Joe has been our liaison for a while. And as he says, we'll just tell everyone to go to the city council. I think we ought to put it on the freaking website, because when I get 45 angry citizens of Springfield and they're not going to the city council, that's not fair to us, or we should be. And I think we've done a great job being a release valve for that. But I think that we might outgrown Spec, and that it needs to morph into something else.
Yeah.
And I can say that because I'm the guy.
You're gonna leave us.
And I would like to stay, but I have to join something else.
I think that's great. So Brittany, I hope that helps.
Yes,
Sort of
yeah, I was writing that down.
I can point you to the notes where we've asked things like that. There was one where Councilor Mary said that they were, in addition to sort of their boards and commission review, they were also talking about, you know, how that fits and how that interplays. And so just a question on where they're at in that process, maybe an opportunity to spark it. But I agree. I think the other thing is that we've done exceptionally well, and I encourage this to be part of our longer range plan, is truly trying to shine light on the work of the police department and provide that hold space for people to understand. So I love that we're taking on policy review, even though we're not a policy approval board, we're creating a space for the conversation to happen. And so I would like us to be even more intentional about seeking input from the community as we're reviewing processes. So that would be something that would be more on us rather than council. So when we're talking about goals, one of the goals for us would be, we know these 5 policies are coming up in the next year. How are we committed to engaging with the community and asking questions like, do you understand the use of force policy? And it's not for us to then necessarily make recommendations to change, but to have that conversation in public so that the community can understand what those words mean. So the community can understand, like, I think that this is an opportunity for that bridge since we're not an oversight body.
Yeah, I think that's really is an awesome point too. One thing, God, I think this was last week was so busy. It was last week. I was a panelist on one of the interviews, and it was really interesting to hear them talk about, it's actually a document that the Obama administration put out, the 21st Century Policing. And I think it's something new. Well, it's not new. It came out during the Obama administration, but it wasn't until the kind of Black Lives Matter protest wave of 2020 happened that police departments actually started taking it out and utilizing it more. And it talks about that. It talks about the accountability, transparency, and communication. And so much of it, I think, and this was standing out to me too, as I was reviewing the minutes and recordings from previous meetings, is that I think that accountability is happening within the police department. It's just not being communicated in a way to, not even to us. There were some things where, like, and we got that public comment last week also that I haven't reviewed fully, but I skimmed it. And it seems to me that there's, like, people just want to know the conclusions of certain things when we say, like, hey, like when a certain case comes out or we see something in the register guard or wherever it is, and they ask about it in public comment, still an active case at that time and they can't comment. It's having that follow-up too, to be like, okay, how do we address that this is actually happening and communicate it? So with policy, like you're saying, Jenna, and then also with these kind of, I'm gonna call them scandals, right? We've had, I mean, I was listening to the recordings from like the months where I think it was maybe at its peak. So that's what's fresh in my head. But there was a lot of scandal and a lot of community trust that was lost during those moments. And that was one of the highlights from my notes. And how do we begin rebuilding that trust? And a lot of it is through that communication on what the repercussions of certain things were.
And that's one of the things we should put down in the future, because I feel that we were personally hoodwinked until I got these dossiers sent to my email address with the police department. I had no idea. And we were meeting with the chief and the staff and no idea. And then when I try asking, it's, well, we can't talk about it. Boom. And that's the end of the story. So I had no idea that all these cases were proceeding, and I had no idea what the outcome was, and I still have no idea what's being done. And so I just feel, if our role, is just to give neighborhood updates on car break-ins, then we just need to have that clarified. I was stunned, just stunned, and I still am. And I really like the new chief, but damn it, I really like the old one. I didn't know it was all going on, because when I started finding out, we were just show up, meet with the good citizens on the SPAC committee, and let's get back to work. So I think now's the time, especially when you got an audience. But I did notice our audience has dropped down to nothing. So
yes, yeah, I noticed that too, that I think people have been going to council more. I used to really listen to the city council meetings too. I haven't been as good about that lately, but
yeah, I haven't either. And
I think, that is both good and bad. It's bad for us. Because people come out when they're angry. So I would hope that means that there's feeling like there are different avenues to have their challenges addressed, or there's fewer challenges. And that could mean a lot of things. It could be just the time of year, but
yeah, and that's why we need it on that going forward, the future agenda to, if that's what we are, and this isn't what we aren't, then I just want, I'm not sure some people on this, some of our counselors are wondering, what we do and how we do it. And I think we ran a lot of interference with them.
yeah,
the last 18 months, there's a lot. Yeah.
And having Joe, because Joe is quite vocal, and I have a lot of respect for Joe. He used to work with the sheriff's department, but he's made it very clear that what we can do, what we can't do, and not what we can do, and then that these all need to be addressed to the city council. Maybe the council can become the new SPAC. I don't know, but I think if we lay out the future goals and bring clarity, then that would be great.
yeah. And I appreciate you, Mike, going back to your previous point about the BIPOC representation. One question that I'm also hoping to be able to ask to council is are our current position breakdowns serving the committee also, right? Because I have personally always thought it was pretty weird that my position even exists, right? I get why it exists. I understand why it exists, and
you mean the minority position?
Exactly.
That was me. I was for that. And then I realized that one of the meetings I used BIPOC, and I'm not sure there were too many of us who knew what BIPOC stood for. So that's just part of my dumb privilege.
Well, and it makes sense. And it's and how do we incorporate that into every position, right? And how do we not kind of continue to tokenize or minoritize the positions, right? Because I've also heard, and this is hearsay from community members, but I've also heard that having positions like that, council has used an excuse to I shouldn't say excuse, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, has used that to not elect certain people to other neighborhood at large positions, which is exactly. And so I don't, it's how do we make it, and I'm hopefully that can be, I'm not being articulate about it now.
Well, I'll articulate it for you. It could be such a positive, enriching experience, and I'm sure it'll be a little bumpy in the beginning, but once we include everybody, inclusion and transparency is just a healthy, nice thing. And so I'm sure there's going to be some apprehension in the beginning, but I can live with it. But I'm an old guy now,
Totally. But I think there's a lot to think about in terms of even just our position breakdown. So it's how do we think about them differently? And one thing I want to see them think about too is, and I think they talked about this in the last round of interviews, but it's what are you even looking for? It's I see this tendency for them to want to nominate people who have previous law enforcement experience, but I don't have that, right? And is that what we're charged with doing, right? It's do we want a bunch of ex-law enforcement on this committee, or do we want more average citizens who don't have that background, who are going to bring different questions to the table? That I think both of those perspectives are valuable, but it depends on, again, it goes back to that goal of the committee and the charge of the committee is what do you want them to be?
Yeah, I wonder what the city council was looking for. That's a good question. Do they even understand what SPAC does? I don't know.
And to that same vein, and I know my tenure was 1 month before COVID. So I don't know what the real world would, I mean, one meeting, sorry, not 1 month, but the city has that amazing program that Neil put together, that's CityLink, in which the goal is to start opening the operations of the city. What is SPAC's role in that? How do we bring, or does SPAC have an opportunity? And I would say for any boards and commission, but since this is our only little sphere of influence, how can we speak at that so that we can encourage people or make people aware that that is an option for their involvement, and that their involvement is not only optional, but welcome and that kind of thing. And so how does the council see their boards and commissions infused in the larger opportunity for civic engagement? Because I think that opens up conversation for, like, let's present to CityLink, let's present to different places.
When COVID hit, within 14 days, I had 7 counseling agencies all converted to telehealth, Zoom, didn't need a beat. And we provided services in Eugene and through the whole, all this telehealth. And SPAC was shut down. And I kept saying, we can meet via Zoom. No, council doesn't want, we don't have the technology. And I'm just going, we did it. And we could have done it faster in 14 days. And it wasn't till all of a sudden there was a need to call us back. And so I quit pushing. So, and that's when I started to determine, well, what is the purpose of SPAC? And it was, neighborhood watch. So there were months where I just really enjoyed not, having to show up. It got to be a habit.
Take a little break.
Take some work. I'm one of those guys that reads all that stuff. So.
Exactly.
That's why we love you, Michael, because you do that. You dig in and you ask the good questions. So I'm going to pause for 1 second. And I think that we've hovered around a lot of great questions for the council for our look forward. What do you think maybe we should ask of our colleagues on SPAC for their look forward? Is there anything different that you think that we might be wanting to pull from them?
When do we get the new members?
Also January council meeting, so probably after our second or after the January meeting.
So in February.
Yeah.
Okay, so we.
A good question.
Well, it is a good question. We should outline it, put it on the agenda for Barry to walk through. I find with Barry, if he has it ahead of time, it goes so much better.
Okay.
Would with me too. I got a preview. I think, as we present to the city council, and Brittany, you're doing the recap. So that means that you'll be presenting that to the council. No, is that?
No, I could do. I thought, isn't Terry going to be involved too? I think Terry and I both are going to be co-presenting.
Terry, you're going to tag team.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, I was
So I think it's important. We've done a lot. I was amazed at how much we've accomplished. And, I've been on other city committees, and boy, we were stormrolling it. And I want the council to be aware of all the heavy lifting this group of citizens did. And we weren't all there. Jenna, you joined us, Brittany, we haven't all been there and doing all this heavy work. And I think because you two jumped in, it got lifted much higher, much quicker. And so I want them to be aware of that this group really ran some serious interference for you guys. And there is a problem and a mandate. And that needs to be addressed going forward. And I think that is enough for city council, that getting the trust of the community. I got a copy of Springfield's survey, and doing all that and getting those results. I think that's all important. And so I think that's where I'd focus.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of what, like, yeah, do we want specific questions to give to, is that what we're saying? That we want specific questions to give to SPAC members in addition to our rough draft, right? Of like,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just was thinking, I'm guessing that they're going to have a lot of the same feedback in terms of a look
oh,
forward.
God.
I just was wondering, are there any prompts that we should be thinking about to like help them think this through so that when January comes, we're not all on the Zoom going, yeah.
Well, I was hoping we'd have an outline for them
Yeah.
to give. These are the points, and then they
Here's
can
where we're at.
come in and go, yes, and add this or one of the things I was reading, and I didn't read all the minutes from all the meetings, but there was one where, you know, Bean went rabbit. And I look back on it and go, yeah, I should. And addressing one of the things that still galls me and we don't talk about and address it is the sexual impropriety culture that existed that allowed the episodes that got our last chief terminated. And this is a repeat of some episodes before. And that's a culture. It's a culture in the rank and file. And I know that's maybe not the preview of what we should be doing, but it's the one central area that I was concerned about, because during the last lawsuit that's coming out, in which a female officer had sexual relations with command staff, that there was reported in the documentation I received that the rank and file were passing around pictures, and that indicates a culture that is tolerant, that exists, that allows this kind of stuff. And I shared my concerns, but I don't hear how it's really being addressed. And coming from the therapeutic community, it's not only a training issue, but it's a review issue that is uncomfortable. But once you start dealing with the transparency, the light, and those are difficult things to discuss at a city council meeting, maybe, or work session, but it's something I'm still really concerned about, and thought it was taken care of during the previous sexual cultural scandal we had before this one, and that caused the other chief to leave. And it was like history repeating itself and no one's talking about it. And I'm just, you know, my head's still spinning around it. And I forgot about it because until I read the minutes, and boy, Jessica kept some good detailed minutes.
Yeah. They're all really good. And I totally agree, Michael. That's something that's been on my radar. And I was bummed I couldn't go to the December meeting, because I think there was another article that had come out about that case. And I was like, oh, it's a good opportunity to kind of ping on it and be like, hey, I saw this. Can we readdress what's happening here? And or even when they're just talking about recruitment, it's like, I know recruitment is so challenging, and it's like, okay, are you in your like, if I were, you know, like a woman who was interested in becoming a police officer, and I had seen an article like that, I wouldn't reply to that job. You know what I mean? If I had sensed that there was this culture there, and if they're struggling with recruitment, how are you addressing those things as well in your process?
It's interesting you bring that up, because I was on the panel to recruit an Hispanic officer with the US, hired a brilliant young guy who's not there anymore. What happened?
Yeah. Exactly. The retention too is a big part of the recruitment. But yeah, I think that and maybe that's something to just follow up on at the next meeting too. Just ask, even outside of this discussion.
And I'm not sure how you can, because it's a personnel issue and we don't have access to that. I was just told, he took another job, and where that relationship should have been nurtured, and I thought that was a good first step, but
yeah, it's tough.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm rotating off in a year. Did I mention that?
Yeah, you did.
We will miss your perspective, and also I will miss your historical perspective, because I think that has been a really important component. I think that there's a balance.
Is that with the monkeys and Michael Nesmith or the Spec?
Yes, that was the saddest news.
Oh, yeah, I'm the old guy. I mentioned that.
No. So in terms of just as a recap and a summary, I feel like I have what I need. Brittany, do you kind of have what you need to start bulleting out sort of next steps and what the committee, the look forward is?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then my world gets slightly slower next week. So I can send something out next week when we have 9,800 less students in our buildings. Does that give you guys enough time? I know, because then we'll have the holiday to review it in advance of sending it to the committee on the 3rd.
Yes, yeah.
That gives me enough time.
Okay. So I will commit to getting you guys something midweek next week, so that you'll have all of that week after the Christmas holiday, if that's something that you celebrate, to review.
Yes, yeah, that sounds perfect to me. Yeah, I think because we both are in education, we're on similar timelines in terms of everything is so chaotic and busy right now. But as soon as I get over Friday, I'm in a lot better place.
And we added in the delay yesterday, so like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to remember how we delay schools.
Exactly. It's like, please don't drive your cars.
I've been working with the U of O or grant writer. We've submitted like 10 different RFP grant proposals, and the writing's all done as of today. So
Good.
that will be a little more open. So
I don't anticipate that my executive summary is going to be that level of detail, but it'll still give you something to read on. Grants are not my bag. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. Oh, well, it was good. I'm glad we were able to connect today. Thank you.
yeah, I'm glad we had
A quick question for you guys. Do you believe that just sort of sharing those two final components is sufficient, or do you think we need to see face-to-face one another before the January 6th meeting? And I actually don't have it.
Well, let's review it, and then after I read it, I may say,
decide if we need to get together.
yeah.
Works for me.
So yeah, if you're as good as your billing, then probably not.
Bust out the red pen, Mr. Bean. All right.
I've got one too. I've got a red pen for Edward.
Perfect. That's what I need. I need a red pen.
Yeah. I also have a yellow one.
Highlighter too.
Highlights. Okay. So I will commit to getting that to you guys, and then we'll evaluate whether or not like we need to hit a quick meeting sometime before the 6th in preparation of sharing with our colleagues. Sound good?
Do we know? I really like our current chief. Do we know if there's a hiring process to make him permanent, or if he's interested in the position? But he had me when he said that he was leading the Springfield Police Department to be a training facility. And when he said that, he had me, because I think that will take care of 90% of what goes on if they do. So I just wondered, he's the interim chief.
We could maybe get at that if we ask, what is Spec's role in participating in the chief hiring process?
Okay. I expect you to ask that question.
Well, we'll get a little answer from him, maybe non-verbal cues.
Yeah.
All right.
I wrote that one down. I wrote that question.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you, Miss Tiffany. I think we're good, unless there's anything you need from us.
No, I think that's it. I will just stop the recording and get it to Jessica.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being available. Take care. Bye.
Have a good Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.